Hi, my name's Paul O'Connell and I own Chez Henri restaurant here in Cambridge. I've had it for 13 years. We're a French bistro with a Latin twist. And today I'm going to make baked stuffed clams, or stuffies as they're known. Growing up in New England, in the summertime on Cape Cod, we would make these. My friend Rich used to dive for quahogs, and we would steam them open. And I think this is my favorite way to prepare quahogs or stuffed clams. So I've steamed the clams open with white wine and water. You could use just water. You don't have to use white wine, but here at the restaurant, it's nice to use. We use some French white wine because we're a French restaurant. So I've steamed them open and I'm letting them cool a little bit. And I'm just going to remove the meat from the shells. And I just want to make sure that when you remove the meat, none of the shell pieces get in there, because they you don't want to eat a shell. And so I'm just take these out like this. It's very easy. You don't want to overcook them. I try and cook them just enough so they're steamed open and they're lightly cooked through. They're going to cook one more time when I bake them. So I take that out, and I'm going to take the juice and reserve it, the liquid, because that's going to be added later on. I like to strain it out because, again, you can see that there's some shell pieces in there. So I just have a little bit of cheesecloth. If you don't have cheesecloth, just any kind of strainer will do. And I'm just going to strain it here. So that's my cooking liquid that has some white wine and water. Some people like to really mince them up. I like to keep them so that you can see chunks of the clam. You don't want them too big so they're chewy. But sometimes you'll go to a clam shack or a restaurant on the beach, and they have so much bread stuffing and so little clam. Like, to me, that's a disappointment when you eat a stuffed clam and you can't even identify the clam in the stuffing. I just have a warm saute pan here, and I'll add some butter to it. Traditionally, these would be very, very simple. Maybe just some, like a traditional New England recipe would probably just be some onion and celery and breadcrumb and this, and maybe some bacon. So I'm going to add my onion. I'm going to put my chorizo in here. Some celery. And some people you can choose to put garlic in or not. I'm just going to put a little bit in here, just because I like the garlic flavor. And then on the recipe that I have, it calls for cubanele pepper. Today I have an Anaheim pepper. You don't need to. Usually you could just use a bell pepper, or green bell pepper, or red bell pepper. I like to have a little bit of spiciness in it. So I'll just dice this up. And I try and keep everything the same size. My cuts, my celery, onion, chorizo, and pepper. And so they're all a little bit small, and the clams are a little bit larger. So I'm just cooking this over low heat, and it's what we call sweating it out. So it becomes sweetened. I'm not cooking it at a high temperature so that it's browning up really. I just want to get all the flavors melded together in a nice sort of a mellow way, which is, again, sweating it with the butter. And I'm going to get my breadcrumbs now. So I've toasted up some breadcrumbs here. Again, I've taken some of my French bread and just diced it up, and some cornbread. Again, this is sort of a take on my own version. Some people use cornbread in the stuffing. Most people, I would say, use some white bread. You could use any kind of sandwich bread, and you just want to make sure that you cut cut the crust off it, and it's just toasted, so it's dried up. And I also have some breadcrumbs in reserve here. These are just some plain white breadcrumbs, panko breadcrumbs. So now everything's cooked, very mild, nice and sweet. At this point, I'm going to add the clams. And I'll put it back on for a minute. And at the very end, I'm going to add my scallion and parsley. I just have some picked parsley leaves here. I have some smoked paprika, which I'm going to add in now. This is just again, we use a lot of smoked paprika here at the restaurant. It's a Spanish ingredient. It adds a nice smoky flavor to the clam, so it's another layer of flavor and another way for us to make it more chez Henri, like more distinct flavors. So just so the paprika's in there, you can see that just a bit. So that's just about done. I'm just going to remove the clam mixture from the heat. Just going to take my parsley and I just sort of scrunch it up and do a cut. I call it a chiffonade. Just sort of shaving it. I have some scallions here. You could put, some people might want to put thyme in it if you want to get really crazy, and you could put cilantro in it. Some people would think that's not a good idea. But a recipe like this, I try and keep things restrained because the original recipes are like it's breadcrumbs, clam juice, and we don't want to get too over the top. I've had some recipes where there's fresh corn in it. I've eaten some with fresh corn in it, and it just doesn't do it for me. I'm not that crazy about it. So I have some, I'm chopping up my scallion and parsley here. And I'm going to add that to this. And then at this, I'm going to add just a little bit of white wine in here. There's some white wine that was in the reserved cooking liquid here. I'm just adding a little bit more. And once I add the parsley and the scallion, I don't want to keep cooking it because I want it to keep its fresh color, vibrant color from the parsley, and the flavor as well, is just keeping it vibrant and fresh. I'm going to put that in a mixing bowl here, and I'm looking for about 1/3 of the chopped clam mix to 2/3 of bread stuffing mix. I'm just going to add that in. So as you can see, it's going to need a lot more liquid. And also one of the good ingredients that we all like is butter or fat. There is butter in here already. So I have my reserved cooking liquid, and I'm just sort of doing it by eye. I'm going to add a bit. And I'm going to let it sit for a minute because it's going to take a little bit for the liquid to be absorbed by the bread. And I want to make sure that I don't want it to be too dry, and I don't want it to be too moist. I want it to be just right. So I'm going to let this sit for a moment. I'm going to set up my clam shells over here. When I either bake oysters or clams in the oven, I like to just put it on a bed of salt. You don't have to do this, but it just adds a little stability. And the salt helps them to cook from underneath as well, because the salt retains the heat, especially if you're doing like a clams casino or something like that. It really helps for them to cook quickly from underneath as well as on the top. So one important thing to do is to taste the stuffing. A lot of people forget to taste when they're cooking. I'm going to check for the texture, and you have to remember that it is going to dry out a bit as it cooks. This is a little bit moist, and so that's why I do have these plain white breadcrumbs to sort of help bind it up. The clams do have a natural saltiness to them, but it needs some salt and some plain black pepper, just to make sure I can taste all the flavors. I want a little bit more paprika in there. And I'm just going to sprinkle a little of this to help bind it up a bit. Because again, trying to find that happy medium between not being too wet and not being too gummy dry. now I'm just going to stuff them up. Stuff the stuffies, as they say in Rhode Island, in Taunton, all those southern Mass places. These are pretty common down in Rhode Island. There's stuffies. I call them stuffed clams. Growing up, we just had baked stuffed clams. There's all kinds of different clam dishes down in southeastern Massachusetts. There's clam fritters are pretty popular in Rhode Island. You see how I have like a nice piece of clam? I like that you can see the clam and the stuff in here. And some people like will make them really smooth like that. I want them to be a little, you want them packed in a little bit, but again, I want, the character, some texture on it. One thing that you could do is if you want to be a little more decadent, is you could add some butter on top of each one as well. Because a little butter never hurt anyone. A little extra butter. And then, so the next step is to just put these in the oven. And then I'll show you a nice presentation if you want to, for serving them and to wow your guests at your cocktail party or your lawn party, or after a day at the beach. Come back and have a nice cold beer or a nice crisp glass of white wine, Sauvignon Blanc, and some stuffed clams, and it's a great after the beach snack. So now I have the clams that just came out of the oven, and you can see that they're a little golden on the edges, and they're better when you cook them right after you make them, because you can see there's a little like sponginess or bounce to them. So when you chill them down, again, they're going to taste really good, but when you make them the filling and then cook them right away, there's something about it that is more appealing, because it has, again, that lighter, fresher flavor. So everything that's fresh is better anyway. So I'm going to just show you a way that you can present these. Again, whether it's after a day at the beach or cocktail parties, a great hors d'oeuvre. I just picked up some of these chili peppers from Thai chili peppers, and they're very hot, but there is some red pepper in there if you wanted to. Maybe you have a really spicy crowd and you could add some of these to the filling, but I think it's fun just to put some of these down on the platter for colorful display. These are very inexpensive. I bought a tray of these at the local market, and it was like $2. So they're sort of a nice. It's my Martha Stewart impression here. Like, have some beautiful presentation. And again, it's edible. It's something that you could put it in the filling. We did have the Anaheim chili in there, and I'm definitely serving it with lemon, because that's what you want to eat it with, and you want your guests to have that with. So I just like to cut nice little wedges here. And if you wanted to be really fancy, we have our smoked paprika, and you can dip the edges, and that's really fancy. So you could do that. And again, these are ingredients that are in the clams. I believe in, like, that, the garnish on platters should have something to do with what you're eating. And then if you have some nice small, like, oyster forks or something like that, that's nice to serve it with. We have some oyster forks here. And then we have the parsley leaves. There's parsley in the filling. I also, I like to, whenever I go to a restaurant and I have stuffed clams, I say, I ask for Tabasco sauce with it, but, we sort of have our own Tabasco with the chili peppers, smoked paprika, and the lemon. You can serve them warm, or you could serve them, people could take these with a cocktail napkin. And, if you have a small fork, or that's what you can eat them with. So these are my stuffies from Chez Henri. They're baked stuffed clams with chorizo and a mixture of cornbread and French country bread stuffing.